You're unmuted.
We're good.
Ready?
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to call this meeting to order. It is 1:16. This is Benzie County Board of Commissioners study session. Roll call, please.
Janot,
Here.
Markey,
Here.
Nye,
Here.
Roloffs is excused, Sauer,
Here.
Craig,
Yes, I'm here.
Brzezinski is excused.
Very good. Please rise and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. We have an agenda in front of us. If nobody has an objection, I would propose we move D under 8 to the top, since we have Yarrow Brown here and she's waited for us.
I have no objections to that, but I do have another question regarding what's currently labeled 8A on review and discuss, the strategic plan and performance goals. Is that a carryover from our last meeting?
Yes, it was requested that I bring back the red line based on the feedback at that study session. In the packet is a red line to document. I also on the last page included my quick notes of the round table of everybody's priorities.
Okay, so it was asked to be brought back.
Correct. Yep, the study session asked to bring it back again.
Jeanette moves to approve the agenda as amended.
Markey will support.
The motion and support, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, so carried. We have minutes from January 14th.
Trigg moves to approve the minutes from January 14th.
I'll receive.
Motion and support. Do we have further discussion? No. All in favor of supporting the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so moved. And that brings us to our first public comment. Is there anybody who would like to speak? Being none, I'll close public comment, and that brings us to our HR update. Jackie's last HR update.
There's just a few things I wanted to talk about. We have hired a few part-time paramedics, so we are getting part-time applicants. We're just having a hard time recruiting full-time, so there is some supplementary there. And then we have two ongoing work comp claims and then one new one. So currently 3 work comp claims, and we do have an employee returning from the medical leave next week. And then outside of that, I just wanted to use this opportunity to say thank you so much for, taking a chance on me with my short experience. And I just really appreciate my time here, and I've learned so much and got to meet such wonderful people that I'm very grateful for my time here.
It has been a pleasure working with you.
Like,
I wish you the best of luck in everything you do next.
thank you so much. Very excited.
You couldn't have known.
Well, that's a great compliment.
Is. Good luck, Jackie.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone.
Any other questions for Jackie?
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. That bumps D up to A. So we're going to have a discussion regarding housing efforts in Benzie County. And I would invite Yarrow up to the podium.
Or are you gonna advance?
Oh, I get, do you want to?
I can.
Okay.
If you let me, if you're.
Click the button, don't play with the roller. The roller messes things up.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having us back again. I have Tracy Davis here. So Tracy is my boots on the ground, helping to support Benzie County in 2024 and then for 2025 as well. So I'm going to just,
Other button.
thank you.
There you go.
There we go. I think most of you know who we are, but Housing North is a 10-county regional nonprofit, and our focus is kind of in 3 main buckets, but really all around housing and helping to remove the barriers to housing. Right now, we don't put people in housing or build the housing, but we are moving into that capacity building space. But our 3 main legs of our stool are communications and awareness, policy and advocacy, and capacity building all around housing. Okay. So I think we all kind of understand this, but I do like to open with just sort of the reasons, why housing is important, and specifically in Benzie County. And I didn't put this in my presentation, but I was just looking at the housing needs assessment, and it did show that you have about 1,561 people who commute into your community that don't live in Benzie County right now. So I think in order to have a sustainable and a viable economy and protect the natural environment and have a community with high quality of life, figuring out how to house all the people that currently live and work in your community is really important, but also those who might live here that are commuting in from somewhere else. So we'll look at the numbers on our website. You can look at the housing needs assessment. There is a summary. There's also a document just for housing, Benzie County, and then there's about a 600-page document if you really want to dive in. But that showed that from 2023 to 2027, you needed about 1,500 units. And what we're tracking is that you've gone down a little bit. So we're tracking about a little over 240 units that are in progress and the permits that have been pulled, but there's still a long way to go in Benzie County to meet that housing need. It is what, 2025?
Already.
And then this is just kind of broken down in one of those summary sheets. So you can see we had the consultant look at different income brackets and what type of housing overall would be needed within those income brackets, and then looking at for sale and rental housing. We don't want to get stuck on just, one number and say you only can build that many, rental new units that are for sale units. We know most people in our region do want to live in for sale housing, but we need rents and affordable units for them to be able to save and get into that for sale unit as well. So just like to talk a little bit about the people. So who's experiencing this housing, crisis? It's everybody in our community, but if you look at what an average school teacher would be making, affordability is relative. We don't want anybody to be paying more than 30% of what they make on housing. So in this case, this person is priced out of being able to purchase a home in Benzie County. That's the average median cost to own a home and what they would pay per month. Then if you look at emergency medical, now I just picked 2 occupations. There's a list of about 30. I just picked the 2 for this case. But in this case, for a rental budget, the median rent in Benzie County is about $1,350. This person, would be priced out of being able to afford that rent in your community. We did this year work with Flywheel companies. Ryan couldn't be here today, but he helped create some stories about the people in your community. So we're putting together a communication toolkit, and we'll use some of these quotes and stories and package them for your county. We just haven't had them, but this is just one example of Taylor and what she's experiencing and some of her wishes around housing. So we're trying to make it really personal and help people understand who that is in your community that's helping or that is experiencing the housing crisis. And we know that you can't just subsidize your way out of housing, but we know that there is some subsidy and ability to solve this, but it's going to take all hands on deck. And this slide just really is to kind of show where subsidy is most needed and then where we can help make some zoning changes or look at different tools and housing resources that can help bring those price points down and bring housing for everyone across this income spectrum.
Can we ask questions along the way?
Sure.
The mortgage payment, does that include taxes and insurance?
In mortgage, yes, it should. In the rental, I believe, Tracy, correct me if I'm right, it's like utilities, but not necessarily internet or garbage, things like that, but it would include electric and so I'm just going to share a few slides as we move into some of the tools and toolkits for Benzie County, but really, there's a lot that goes into, and Art should know this well, the cost of what it takes to build and develop housing. Land is one of the bigger costs. We also know that design and permitting, can be in there as well. So having a suite of opportunities and ways that you can help reduce any of these costs to create affordability is really important. So we're going to touch on some of these different layers, but I guess what we're trying to say is it's not just going to be one solution. It's not going to just be changing zoning. There's going to be a lot of things that community is going to have to do to be able to bring that overall cost of construction down. I think in Leelanau County, the last I heard, and that's where I live, it was about $450 a square foot to build. I think it's a little less, in Benzie County, but it is just getting more expensive. And so we have to get creative in how we create some solutions. So typically in our region, this is what our region is zoned for. A single family home with a pretty large minimum lot width. And in order to build this home right now, would cost about $425,000 on average. And you would need to be making over $120,000 to afford that mortgage. What Tracy and I are going to talk about are some different opportunities and ways to get creative and look at different types of housing. This is an example of a cottage court where you could get that price point down into where someone earning just under $60,000 a year could afford a home here. And these are some examples that Ryan shared at a housing workshop in December, and we have a few more that we can share as well. I just put a couple in here. This one is another example of a cottage court and showing an example from the city of Frankfurt where they actually have this in one of their municipal codes, so people can actually see how they could adopt and build this type of housing.
When you say cottage court, is that like a collective where it's in, as opposed to like a condo situation, like a collective where you own your unit, but there's common grounds? And there's a
Exactly.
governing body that owns kind of the stuff in your unit?
Exactly. I like to
Right?
bring up the movie reference, The Dude. I don't know if you remember, he lived in a cottage court, or like in California, you see those a lot where you have shared common space you typically would own, maybe even rent the home, but the homes would be facing into like a common area, but they'd be smaller square footage generally. So this is a lot of tools, a lot of blue and white on the slide. Tracy, I'm going to turn it over to her in a minute here, but we're going to talk about some of these tools. Some are already happening in your community, and then the ways the county can lead and help support the townships and villages in adopting these tools. The first one I'm going to talk about, we want to just talk a little bit about how these are all layered and they each help in a different way with housing. So some of them are going to help with financing. Some are going to help with actually the type of building, what kind of ordinances or what is allowed, in that. And then others are going to look at how you can maybe incentivize that housing by using some of the different housing tools. So everything is kind of layered and works together is the point we're trying to make here. And a lot of collaboration is needed as well. This is how my brain works. I think I might have shared this one, but each of these tools can be used for a different reason. So if you're building less than 4 units, you might use an attainable housing district tool or a neighborhood enterprise zone. Tracy's going to go into some of these. Some are really only for multifamily, and some tools can be combined and used together. And that's really what we want to emphasize, is to be set up for the most success in your community. So any community could adopt and combine some of these tools. And oops, I did it again, Katie. The first one I want to just mention is zoning reform. I'm also really excited that our region is going to have the first zoning atlas project come to our region, which is essentially coding and mapping all of the zoning districts that provide a tool for both developers and your average person to use and really understand zoning. But this is one step in help making these tools more affordable, or housing more affordable. And this is just an example of how you can take a traditional single family zoning on 18 acres and actually bring in 146 new homes. So density, of course, is really important. Having access to water and sewer and having zoning that would allow this type of density is also really important. A lot of our communities, Frankfurt, I'll highlight, Josh was going to be here today. He's the president of our board. They're really leading on a lot of these, but there's also a lot of communities in Benzie County who could dive into zoning reform. And so these tools are out there. One of them is our Housing Ready Checklist. One is the Zoning Reform Toolkit that Michigan Association of Planning came up with. And right now, East Bay Township, I would lift up and say they're one of the communities who's taking their master plan that they just updated, using these 15 principles, picking which ones apply to them, and then adopting or updating their zoning ordinance to reflect those 15 or those 10 principles that they worked on. It took about a year, but now they have an updated zoning code that does reflect the best practices. And what we're trying to show in these slideshows, I won't show in every slide, but that all of these pair and work well together. So zoning reform happens, and then these are the other tools that you can also use and that would go alongside zoning reform. So I'm going to turn it over to Tracy. It's the left click, Tracy. and I think you want to talk about pre-approved ones? Okay, and then you can pass it back.
So, as Yarrow mentioned, zoning isn't going to be the ultimate answer. It's just a piece of that puzzle. So, I'm going to talk about not just zoning, but incentives and different types of tools that can help bring all that together, make housing in your community work. So, pre-approved plans are, an interesting roadmap for your community. You've already have designs that you may have approved or are designs that are favorable in your community. So you can have some pre-approved plans, and those plans reduce the cost to the development, which we saw, that's one of those barriers is cost. So it'll reduce that cost, but it also then the whole process is quicker. Those things are administratively approved. There's not contention necessarily when you're going through a hearing with a specific project, because the developer's taking what you've already decided is the type of plans that you want to see in your community. So there is a pattern book that is available. It's free. It has housing plans that are available. Again, that's reducing that cost to a developer. But again, it's what you as your community would like to see happen and approve to happen in your community.
Right?
Oh, yes, yeah.
Tracy, so I don't lose my train of thought, can we ask questions as we go? How many communities are using those pre-approved plans
I don't
in the region that you're servicing?
Do you have a number? I mean, there's a lot of discussion about it, and I think that councils and units of government are really interested in it because we're out there talking about this as a possible solution. I would say less.
Okay.
But there are examples.
And our zoning is all done at the township, the local or local level, not at the county level. Again, in your region, how are they more, is there more counties that have countywide zoning than township zoning?
No, but there's really not that countywide zoning. It's townships, villages,
Okay.
cities making, those determinations. And part of what I'm here to do as a housing ready person is going into each of those where it makes sense and helping them work that process. So that's kind of the boots on the ground. When Carol talks about that, we'll go to each of those units of government and help them with whatever it is that they need. And if,
Benzie County is not unique.
no.
Yep.
It's only one county.
So you
Yeah.
could say that these are pre-approved plans, but wouldn't topography have a large role in that? I mean, when you have steep slope ordinances, one pre-approved plan could fit on one parcel, but not be approved for another parcel. So this still all has to go through the process, right?
It does go through the process, but you already know and have worked through, the developer has seen and received plans. So it just makes that process a little easier. But yeah, you'll still have to go through some. Right, yeah.
Right.
It does streamline it. It's more like, when we talk about streamlining. So one of the other things, the incentive, this is an incentive, the Brownfield TIF. And I'm sure that you're pretty aware of just Brownfield TIF in general, but there is now a housing, a lot of times they call it HTIF or housing TIF. So it includes in there an opportunity to make housing attainable. So I will go through a little bit, very basic because it's pretty in-depth. But so as you know, for HTIF or TIF in general, you have the tax base that is already existing, for example, on a vacant lot. The taxes that you receive. So a developer comes in and purchases that property and wants to do housing, for example, on it. So you're gonna always continue to receive that base amount that you were receiving before the developer started the project. And then the unit of government decides you can do between, I think, 7 years to, I think, 20 years is the max, but the unit of government decides that during that time period, the taxes will increase because the units are developed, for example. But you'll only receive in the brownfield plan that base amount until the expired timeline. And then when the expired timeline comes, you receive that full value of taxes. But the interesting thing is you would never have had that development. So you never would have gotten that additional amount and you're not losing anything. And the state will also pay for the school taxes that you would have captured. So you're not, schools aren't losing anything either, which is an important thing. So we're going to talk a little bit about more about HTIF, which we have lots of guides that kind of walk through the process. Actually, I can do a whole workshop on housing TIF and how that makes sense and why that makes sense. But this kind of goes through the process about an eligible site. The Brownfield Authority approves the plan. Then that plan would go to the county for them to approve the plan. And just depending on what that plan says and the scope of the plan, it might go to MISTA for approval, but not all of them have to go to for approval.
No, they have not.
But that would be one thing that county could do. I think it's. Not necessarily.
We did put together a pilot ordinance, but not brownfield TIF.
It really, I think we can share after this meeting, but I think it is just. Adopted resolution.
Oh, yeah, right after the meeting would be good because I had a meeting yesterday with a gentleman who wants to potentially work with that whole realm for a project in Frankfurt.
Okay. So with housing, the HTIF, housing TIF, the one of the stipulations is that the price either for sale or rent has to be no more than 120% AMI. So it's up 120% AMI. And in Benzie County, that area medium income is up to $143,000, but that's for a family of 8. So if you're talking about 120% AMI is really from a 1-person family to a 4, it's between $75,900 for a 1-person family. And then a family of 4 is $108,000. So that's the range that program would be targeting up to that maximum level.
Also be.
Lower, yeah.
All housing. Okay.
So the thing, I think we have an example. I think this is a little bit of a complicated example for HTIF. So I'm going to use something.
So this is the very first. Oh, this. Project in development.
To kind of simplify with simple numbers that I'm just pulling out. So if there is a rental unit and they're going to use the HTIF, so it's up to 120% AMI. The plan stipulates that no more than 30%, because that's what HUD says, is allowable for someone to spend on rent. The developer's going to come in and spend $6 million on this development. And by the time they have the rental income limits, because this is what HUD says you can only spend, they are going to have a deficit of, say, $500,000. So that deficit that they have, because they can only charge a rent that's lower than what they normally would, nobody's going to do that development. I mean, why? Nobody wants to lose money. I mean, that's just the way of the world. So the developer is able to put into the HTIF plan that $500,000. And again, I just be numbers, round numbers for ease, but they're able to put that rent, the difference between what they are going to charge and what they would be charging if they charge the full rate into their plan, which helps them make it across the finish line. That makes sense.
And you're talking about their on rentals operating costs, right?
Yes, you could do it for sale also. But that, yeah, that example is right.
Okay.
And again, we can go through a long,
And if that's one thing we were gonna. One of the things with this, so you have to remember is that is a gap, like it's future tax revenue. So there is going to need to be tax revenue. That still is. That is. Programs that can help, and then there are some names.
Just for your own information, our EDC is also our brownfield.
I have a question on that, actually. I'm sorry, it might not. How many brownfield sites do we have, the county? Do we even know that? Or do you know that for us? Don't know.
well, so with the housing TIF, the housing brownfield, it's not the same traditional brownfield rules
I
that they
see.
used to have. So if you're going to do any housing and stay in that up to 120% AMI, it automatically qualifies to be included in a brownfield plan, which that's part of that change. The housing gap being included in that plan and the requirements for what that land looks like, that's part of that change that is in the new housing TIF. That answer your question?
Christie, we have two active brownfield tax credits right now. One's commercial, and it's in honor where the Shell station is. And the other one is at Gateway Village in Frankfurt.
And everything owned by the land bank is brownfield eligible.
I believe document shows all.
Would be the brownfield authority.
Or eligible properties. Yeah.
So, that's what's existing now under that old structure of brownfield plan. So as I mentioned, don't have to be on a site that was traditionally what was under land bank or brownfield plan, but you could, any vacant site that is determined to have housing on that site up to that 120 AMI.
Expanding the definition of brownfield is what you're telling me.
Yes, as long as you keep within
Mhm.
that 120 AMI, yes.
Housing. So, it's for different eligible. But also, not only is it housing sites, but it's eligible expenses. If you can get reimbursed for housing. He can email you that's up. I think that's part of what it's, the opportunity in this thing, and that you can also use. On
And one of the things that I've found is having that workshop specifically about TIF. That's aimed at units of government, villages, the townships, and individuals, those stakeholders, so that they have a nice understanding of what is eligible, how can we use it? Because when a developer comes in, then everybody's on the same page and they understand what the developer is talking about and why that's so important. Make those units happen.
I would be interested in that.
But there has to be a breaking point, right? For an entity to say we can only TIF, we can only do a certain amount, because you're foregoing a large amount of taxes for a long period of time,
Well, you can determine that period of time.
right?
And that's maybe some of that policy that you set up front. What's the period of time? What do you want to see in that TIF policy before you
So
get to
it's, I
the,
mean, it's a risk reward scale of, we want to provide housing, we want to make it easier, but we still have to provide services and be taking in the revenue from the taxes. And how much can we do over here without impacting over here?
yes, but
So it's,
Yes.
They can help advise that, and I think it would also be deciding, what projects we do.
and you shouldn't TIF it exactly the way they're gonna ask for 30 years.
okay, we TIF it
Don't
the
have
way
to
we want,
accept
right?
30 years,
Okay.
right? And the other thing is that within your agreement, you can have an agreement for services. So you have the TIF plan, and this is what happens a lot of times.
Municipal
You have the
services.
Yeah,
TIF
yeah.
plan, and then there's an additional plan for municipal services that they just make a payment,
So,
help offset.
additional fees
Yes.
to, okay.
Really has a lot to do with how it's designed. When I look at what's happening with the DDA in Traverse City as an example, and they put together quite a pot of money. What they've been able to do is improve the properties, so it does lift values of other properties that aren't paying TIF.
Mhm.
If I remember that right, am I being correct on that? Kind of?
Yes. The other thing, for a lot of communities, the land wouldn't be developed. You wouldn't. I heard you say, have to balance that and you're losing a portion of the revenue, but you
For
wouldn't
a
have
period
ever,
of time.
yeah, nobody would have developed
It wouldn't have been
that.
improved.
So you would never have reached that other level. So this gives an opportunity for development to occur. And then whatever your threshold is for the years, then you start to reap the benefits, the full taxes after that.
I just want to interject. I'm getting a message that your mic, you cannot be heard. Ron W. Tap. Oh, it's working. Oh. We speak more directly into it.
Is this better?
I sent a
It is.
message back.
So there are a number of tools. You may have heard of the pilot payment in lieu of taxes, or as Josh Mills says, he calls it a PILT. So instead of the regular taxes, there is a negotiated amount of payment over a period of time. So one of the things that if you're looking to use a pilot, again, having the policies in place by November 1st, then you're able to use a pilot the following year. So
And Katie, didn't we develop ours by November 1st of last year?
You're talking about like townships that they do that they want to have it highly valued. They should have something.
Hey, Yarrow, can you come up to the microphone too? Think so?
I was just gonna add that for townships and villages, that November 1st deadline would be important. And to, if you are talking to them, to just let them know that they should have some sort of policy in place to be able to use the new workforce housing pilot for the next fiscal year. I'll just name it.
Ron, did you know, does Benzonia, either the village or the township, do they have a pilot ordinance?
I don't believe they do. And I mean, in thinking about what you're just proposing, I mean, I can't imagine a township or a village would move forward without, we have a Susan Wenslick. That's who guides us through the TIF and explains it on an elementary level till we can handle more. And she's really helped us to understand it. I would assume a township or a village would need a Susan Wenslick too, to move forward with, or somebody who had that expertise. They wouldn't do this on their own.
No, no. they wouldn't
Right.
do it on their own.
Okay.
And she also serves as the Brownfield Authority at the county level too.
She's wonderful. She works magic and has magic spreadsheets and.
And I should say that these three spreadsheet or documents up on the, we did email them to all units of government. And so we're hoping to have that be the starting point for them to think about it. And then hopefully Tracy or I would be invited in to then help them. And we do have example ordinances.
Yeah, so this was just up there so that you could see we have sort of a quick cheat sheet that walks people through, whether it's a different district or the HTIF or payment in lieu of taxes. It lays it out so people have an understanding, but we also can walk people through the process of that, whatever it is that they decide that they are interested in.
So for the smaller entities, there's an administration fee that's kicked back to the entities. Would that cover a person guiding these entities through the process?
Sure. I did not
Okay.
know about this fee.
Well,
But yeah.
no, it said it on one of your first slides. There was
Yeah.
like a 5% administration.
Once the pilot, yeah, once all that, and because there is some reporting and some annual requirements that they'll have to do. So my understanding is they can charge that as long as it covers their annual expenses. But in this case, this would just be ahead of it, helping those units of government to understand the different ordinances, like Traverse City has an example and some others, and kind of deciding I guess what their own parameters would be around that.
Have you seen smaller units utilizing this?
Yes, not necessarily townships yet, but that's what we're hoping. And a lot of it will be project dependent. So, and we're hoping that, they'll be more proactive, but as soon as the project comes to them, they'll likely.
Frankfurt uses us.
Which
Said
one?
Frankfurt uses
Yes.
us.
Frankfurt, yep.
And then it can be negotiated per project. There's a lot of communities that misunderstand what a pilot does, because I can show you examples where the payment on the pilot is more than what they were getting on the tax. Because once it's developed and the revenue stream starts.
Yeah, and I should say Blair Township is one actually in Grand Traverse County. So there have been a few, but those were really because a developer came to them.
So, as Yarrow mentioned, we have a list of different examples throughout this area that are using different projects and different tools. And then you can go, if anything's underlined, it's a link. So you just click on that and you can have more information. You can bring up their specific language. But this is just a whole host of options that you can.
And clearly Frankfurt is the leader in your community. I think a lot of our other communities want to be like Frankfurt, which is an honor. Oh, yeah. So we talked about some of these different tools, but you still need to be able to fund these tools. So we're going to just talk briefly about a few examples of a revolving loan fund. But essentially lower interest financing is one of the biggest needs in affordable housing projects. There's a lot of grants out there. There are a lot of other financing tools, but what we hear from our units or our nonprofit and for-profit developers is something to fill that gap that's going to be, less than what the going interest rates are right now. So between 1% and 4%. There are Housing North has a mini revolving loan fund right now, and we're working with the state of Michigan and asking for a $10 million to create a revolving loan fund for all 10 counties. So this is one opportunity that we're looking at and have been researching and trying to figure out what that would look like. Right now, we have deployed up to $200,000. We have a few other micro loans out there, and it's really grant and funding dependent. And these would focus on projects supporting 120% of the AMI or less. There's also CDFIs that are creating revolving loan funds, but I wanted to share how Grand Traverse County is created a revolving loan fund with their brownfield and land bank. So this is an example of a neighboring county who has created a revolving loan fund using their existing processes. And then we also know that the city of Grand Rapids actually created their own revolving loan fund. And Ryan Kilpatrick, who is a consultant that works with us, also was involved in this. So these are just some case studies, but we do think every community should consider, a way that they can help support low interest financing or housing. And I'm going to pass it back to Tracy.
So we're going to go back to tools. There are districts that can help make housing attainable. So one is the Attainable Housing District, and Frankfurt has one of these. It is for 4 units or less, it's up to 120% AMI, and the unit of government designates an area as this district for housing. So it is a 50% tax abatement. And again, you determine the number of years, can be as low as 7 and up 12 years that you're going to have that abatement process. So this is one of those tools that, and it provides an area that you want a certain kind of housing in that area, but it is for smaller development. The Residential Facilities Act, which Frankfurt also has, but that is for 5 units or more. It's a 50% tax abatement. Again, the unit of government gets to determine the number of years, and it's up to that 120% AMI. And really what hearing in conversations with developers, the districts, whether it's a residential facilities exemption district for the 5 or more, or the attainable housing, that the benefit of that is cash flow for them. So if they're looking and needing cash flow, they're maybe more interested in a district. But if cash flow isn't something that they're interested in, they might want to stick with an HTIF. So those are some of the factors that they think about when they're looking at these. You can stack them though. So I'm just going to throw that out there. But so we do have a case study that talks about how an attainable housing district would work. So somebody purchases a duplex, they need to do some rehab, and then 50% of that tax abatement goes back to the owner of the home. So because there's that abatement, they're able to have rent be lower for units. And that's how that program that works.
If you just go to this, if you Google attainable housing or workforce housing in Frankfurt, it'll take you right to their page. So any community that's asking about these, there are, oh, here they
You're
are.
there.
There's some examples right on there. There's an example resolution, example application. So Frankfurt has really developed it for any community that wants to do the same. But then in the attainable housing one, they picked, I can't remember the district, but it's a certain designated area, like the subdivision in their city. It's called like Lake.
I don't remember the name of it, but I just wanted to make sure everybody saw that there were those links that you can read the full articles, see their process, language for resolutions. It's all right there. And again, clicking on some of those links, you can get more, their plans are out there. Like they're very transparent and willing to share. They just want to see housing in general.
So I kind of mentioned a few of these throughout our talk, but these are just ways I think the county, can help support housing. Some of these things are already in place. I hear you have an EDC. So I think, any way you can work with the EDC to leverage revenue bonds or look at different investment in your communities, including infrastructure expansion, that would help with future housing. You have 1,500 people commuting into your county that don't live here. And then you still have that need of about, 1,200 units. So these are just some ideas. You already have the pilot passed, so you're ready, pilot resolution, but anytime those units of government reach out and you can direct them to us for those to support that pilot. And then I think we mentioned the HTIF, just making sure your brownfield plan includes housing as an eligible activity, and any education you want us to support with on that, we're here. And then I guess we just sort of wanted to open it up to hear, what do you feel like you need in 2025 to support housing? We're here. There's opportunities for fee for service contracts with Housing North. Tracy, will continue to support the affordable housing group that gets together monthly, but just kind of wanted to hear from you. And then this is just a list of things that we are currently doing in other communities through our Housing Ready program. So we're here to answer any questions. We will email this out. I think Katie has a copy, and then this is our team right now that is working in our 10 county region. So thank you.
Any questions?
Well, just a comment that will lead to a question. When we first discussed educating the Board of Commissioners on what's happening in housing in Benzie County, part of what I hoped we would cover is you could share with us the developments in the last 12 to 24 months or ones that are planned already in the future. Are you aware of them and can you talk about them?
Yeah, for sure. And I think in my first slide, I had some notes up there, but yeah, so basically of the numbers that I shared, most of those I would say are not affordable, they're market rate. So we know about the properties that are in Lake and Maine. We have the Grove Place properties, the single family homes in Frankfurt. We're also watching the project is it Gilmore Township that the Crystal Mountain is working on with Homestretch. I'm sorry, Weldon. Weldon. See, I have like so many townships in my brain. We did just have a housing workshop where we identified a mapping workshop that Tracy was at, and there was, I believe, 37 properties identified on 90 acres. So I think we're really in that space of trying to attract and find more development opportunities in Benzie and work on more projects. So you have your nonprofit developers that are really actively working. I would say, we could start to attract more for-profit developers, knowing where those sites are and knowing what the opportunities are. But most of the activity that we're following and are aware of are through the existing nonprofit developers that are pretty active in your community.
I know Homestretch has been generous with the amount of time they give us. And I try to tell John that he just needs to focus on Benzie County and that's it. But we
Good
do
luck.
need to position ourselves for the for-profit developer. And we've got to create some additional tools and that work. I worked with one community that we held a developer day and took them around to show them sites that were ready. We're not there. We can't do that yet, but that's what we need to work towards.
Yeah, so we did come to your county for our Housing Summit bus tour. I don't know if you knew that, but that was really informative, and I think it was really cool to see. About 25 people attended. Tracy, were you on that?
Yes.
I think one of the things I heard was that just the way the different nonprofit developers also engaged and got to know each other. John Stimson was showing the mass timber, pieces that were in his apartment. So it was just a really good experience to have people actually walk through them. So I think we'll do that again and have people actually see some of these sites in a different part of the region. But I would say Benzie County and the Village of Frankfurt is really leading. I think I would just focus on trying to, the next step, Tracy and I will work on those housing opportunities in those communities and then look at some of the infrastructure and expansion barriers. So similar to Leelanau where I live, there are just some of our areas don't have water and sewer to support.
Our biggest challenge in this community, in my view, is that a developer can have a 35, 36 to 50 unit project here, or they can go to a larger community and do 250 to 1,000. I mean, economically, that's where they end up. So we've got to we need to be even more assertive about how we attract those people. Why do they want to do business here? Why do they want to invest here? The nonprofits are great, but they have limited capital that they have available to them, as well as limited resources to actually build. We need to find a way to attract that for-profit developer.
I agree. And I think you're on your way. I think there's a collaborative, that's getting together and wanting to do that, but there still are going to be some barriers. And so trying to work through those barriers. And then, right now, Charlevoix County has 3 different cities that have RFPs out, RFQs. They're not getting a ton to bite on them, so I think a lot of it is us helping at Housing North and your other partners to really attract those developers that are going to invest in your community. But it's tough if they can go somewhere else and it's easier. Likely they're going to go there. And now you could have a LIHTC project or a low income housing tax credit project in your community, so that's part of it, is if you're ready and open to some of that density, Tracy and others can kind of help find that site and see where that opportunity could be.
The thing you have to remember with LIHTC is it's up to a 2-year lead. There's only 2 application periods a year.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking of one project that I won't identify specifically, but individual owns it. There's 18 lots developed that have water to it already. And he's little by little by little, he's building smaller homes. And what we need to do is probably sit down with that person and say, how can we get you to do this more quickly? 1 or 2 homes a year isn't really going to do it.
Exactly.
Other questions or comments? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Okay, that moves us to our discussion of the strategic plan, priorities, goals, and action item. So we have a red line document.
Yep, so in your packet, based on what you said at the last study session, I did tweak and add language and take out language based on the conversation. There's not a ton of changes to it. But that was based on the conversation. I did at the last page, I noted your specific priorities listed in the roundtable as well. And so here it is. I guess I'm looking today for your approval, additional tweaks, additional conversation, and if you want to move it forward for approval.
I mean, in my opinion, we've touched it enough. This could go on indefinitely.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you did include at the back of this, the comments from the commissioners, and I'd invite each one of them, let us know what you need and resources to get these things done. And love to work with you.
So outside of accepting the changes, and then on the last page, I'll put like a heading that says comments from individual commissioners, just so the average person doesn't get confused, because we do publish this on our website. Is there any other things that you want to see in this document different or added?
What about renewable energy? Wasn't that on one of the comments that was?
I don't recall. I thought I typed everything as you guys spoke. Did I forget it? I know we talked a lot about the resiliency, because that word stuck in my head.
Oh, that's right.
It was
we
that.
talked
So yeah,
about-
so on page 5, I added, and then we will strive to focus on smart growth development opportunities, resiliency to changing demands, and support of sense of place, encouraging our youth to remain in and return to Benzie County. But maybe I missed some.
That was right. That was in place of another word that was upsetting, but yes, yeah.
Renewable energy conversation, wasn't that about the gas?
It might have been, and that did get incorporated as part of the comments.
Right.
Yeah, we didn't refer to it as renewable energy, but what was the expression we used?
I thought we
But it
said
was in the master plan.
the only other thing I'll note is under the high level themes, you wanted me to retweak the last bullet. So my best stab at that was develop an understanding of the county's role in educating constituents on issues arising that affect the county, its operations, and future revenue sources. Was that a better rewording?
Residents will be upset or something.
Understanding constituents, yeah. Okay,
Much better,
okay.
I think. Does anybody have any feedback, any input? If not, I'm gonna say that Katie can assume she can move forward with this. Take her to print. And then we'll revisit it in, what'd we say, 6 months? Or
I
at
thought,
a point?
yeah,
roughly
usually annually, at a
Annually?
minimum, we've been looking at it. Cool.
Yeah.
So it'll be up for full adoption at your next meeting.
Yeah, and quite frankly, we might be doing this as a board annually, but Rhonda and I are probably gonna want to talk to you about it with a greater frequency. Hard to move this along if, you know, you're only looking at it once a year.
Okay, very good. Let's move forward then with our discussion on the opioid settlement funding proposals. We have 4 of them to consider. Get a scoring matrix. I think a couple of us turned in and a few of us didn't. Various.
So based on some of the feedback I received is that the scoring matrix this time around was a bit daunting. And so I know there was conversations about perhaps not using a scoring matrix specifically for next go around. I only received back a few of them, and that, looking back, was the case from last time as well. We didn't end up getting all 7. And so maybe that's just not the right way to go about it. We also talked about at the study session briefly after the presentations that the process itself seems to be a bit daunting to those who maybe want to request money. And then there was conversation about how internal staff was being put through the same process as the public members. And so I know we wanted to talk about that a little bit and potentially tweaking that in the future. So the purpose of today is to really talk about those 4 proposals that were given at the last study session and any recommendation going forward for allocation of funding. I did send you an update from Mr. Towersley regarding his proposal. As you know, while they were here, they kind of tweaked what they originally sent. That's also in the packet for you as well.
I know we may not be ready to move on all of them, but one of them today I'd like to focus on for the probation parole office. I'm not sure what more can be added to that to decide whether we're going to move that along. I would share with the group that I had a conversation with the Transportation Authority, specifically the chair of their finance committee. He has agreed to advocate a matching amount of money, but he, of course, can't make that decision on his own. That has to come from the full board, and they're going to bring it to the full board in March. But I don't think that I'd want to condition our moving this forward on that. Just you should know that we're working towards getting that matching amount of money. But I'd hate to see us hold that up.
Right. I think my thought on the probation request is wasn't it a blanket 5-year, a large sum? I
20
think
grand.
20 grand, right? I think my position would be, let's allocate 4 grand for the first year and make this renewable based on it being, if he's sitting there with, 2,500 still in the account, why would we?
Right.
Right, fund it again for another 4,000. I think we need to make this more of a cyclical thing for people who have been applying and renewed, like our speakers at the high school. I don't think there should have to be a separate proposal for that. I think we did it, it worked well. It should have just been like whoever headed that one up. Can we go ahead and do that again and receive funding without a totally vetted application? And I think that is something we need to do to make this simpler and more accessible, especially for people who have done the proposal on the front end and then make it renewable. John may come back in at the end of the year and say I'm out of funds. And we could just simply renew it at that time. But I would be in agreement. I would like to see that one move forward. I also spoke with people on the Benzie bus, and I am less hopeful in my conversations that they are going to participate, but perhaps your conversations will lead to something different.
The finance chair made a commitment to shepherd this through. Whether that happens or not is yet to be seen, because the executive director was hesitant to move it through. But again, one way or the other, that's just not a condition of it. And I agree with you. Some of these is what I would like to see is just give me a report of how many recipients you used, like at the school, how many sessions did you hold? How many people were there in attendance? A 1-page overview. And I don't want to just not know what happened, but as Chip told us, we've made it a little complicated. And I understand why. We were taking the guidance from MAC, the association. So what's the process here? Let's just say we wanted to take the probation office and move that forward on its own. What do we do here today to do that?
I think we just make a recommendation.
You make a recommendation to move forward with funding for the Michigan parole and probation proposal for 1 year period. And then at the February 25th agenda, we would have a action for you to take officially for that specific project for that amount of money.
Can we put in the wording, the full amount be renewable for a 5-year period, based on usage?
Yeah. Mhm.
And that grants the ask if it's. But also kind of gauges, doesn't fund some, it's not necessary.
Yeah, based on need or based on usage. I did learn, and this was, maybe everybody else understood this but me. This is for probationers only. The parolees apparently are still being financed by the state. I didn't know that. I spoke to Sean about it. So this is just for probationers.
And only for Benzie
Yeah,
folks.
to get them to and from meetings and
Work.
Work,
work,
testing.
doctor appointments.
So,
So the recommendation going forward, the recommendation for February 25th, am I hearing this correctly? Is to approve the proposal from John Anchek, parole and probation for funding of up to $20 for 5 years, over the course of 5 years.
2,000.
20,000.
20,000 over the course of 5 years.
Oh, okay, all right.
everybody in agreement on that? Does anybody have an issue with that one?
My commitment to that is state function backed off. I'm never in favor of funding stuff like this. Darn,
It was not state
we
financed.
had funding before.
Yeah,
That was
it's
through a
through
separate-
United Way and one other nonprofit.
It was through a separate.
Yeah, that was my confusion too, but he straightened me out on it. And United Way and the other agency just said, look, we don't have the money to do it anymore. He said, that doesn't mean that next year they might not.
There's gonna come a point we won't have them. Eventually, this opioid money will dry up. I hate to set precedents.
Do what we can now.
Well, do we put this to a vote? Individually on each?
Well, I think the
proposal, like-
consensus is, we can just do this by consensus to move it forward.
Mhm.
So far, Gary, I respect your position and we'll have a chance to talk about it more later, but I only hear one dissenter at the moment.
Tim, are you in favor or not?
Yeah, I'm in favor of this.
Yes, good. That one will move
So
forward.
that one will move forward.
What about the Central Wellness? Can we talk about
I
that?
was
a
just gonna
moment?
bring that one up. So the Central Wellness, there was a request from them for $50,000 for their programming specifically.
This is what they're in the business of doing, helping people with these issues. I appreciate their organized approach to it. I would like to see, again, we have a requirement in here that they report back how the money was used and the impact that it had,
Mhm.
right? So, I think it's the same sort of thing. If this works and you impact lives and they can come back, you make that one renewable, I don't know, or just grant the
Well, their request was for one,
Just
one
one
full
time,
year.
yeah.
one time.
And we did something similar last year, right?
But it'll be interesting because they were projected to impact, I think they said 9 to 10 people. Now, if they only impact 2 and have monies left over, I mean, how is that? Is the full amount handed over and then we wait to hear, or is it reimbursable?
So it has been mostly reimbursable. Last go around was a lot of internal, so we paid the bills, but other things were reimbursable.
We did it.
So I did not get official written reports because every single recipient was here with the AG roundtable and gave multiple testimonies to this group as well as the AG and other stakeholders. So I did not require a written report at that time because of the testimonies given at that roundtable.
I don't think that situation is gonna happen again, so I do. think
Right.
it's
I think
important.
this time, yes,
Yeah.
for sure. But I can ask for those written documents, but I mean, they were all here in a roundtable giving their testimonies multiple times over.
But this time it's gonna be a condition of the amount.
Yes.
Everybody comfortable with that?
But let me be devil's advocate just for a moment. Because I respect the way that Central Wellness is managed. But I've heard it said that they have a fairly large surplus. Does that influence us at all? Oh, by the way, I don't know that for a fact. I've not seen their numbers, but
I think the difference is the buckets of money that they can work with. I mean, this, if, you know, in the application that they wrote, this is for people who aren't Medicaid or Medicare eligible.
Mhm.
And this is the gap coverage that insurance doesn't cover, or the buckets that are set forth.
okay, so that surplus, a lot of that's restricted funds that wouldn't apply to this.
Wellness money, it's, you know, they're a region. And so some regions go over and then these regions give their money over here to fill the gap over here. So the picture of the funding can change throughout the year. This is my understanding is to cover needs that their funding can't go for these purposes.
And the program or that they're funding, do they actually get receipts where it could be reimbursable?
Say that a different way.
Well, I heard you mention about being reimbursed instead of just giving them $50,000.
Right, well, I'm wondering, you know, if the need is, I don't know, if it's $30,000 for the year because they have a lesser number of folks to help. Are we just handing over the 50,000 or are we letting them ask for what they need based on the number of people who are taking advantage of the program?
You can spin it any way you want to. It's your money. And so you could decide. Now, I do see that it could be difficult in this situation because there's not necessarily receipts per se, but they could provide, you know, an invoice based on the expenditures for the program to date and request the funds that way on a monthly basis, quarterly basis, or what have you. You could still require some sort of reimbursable type relationship.
That'd show more accountability, that's for sure.
Mhm.
Because I want to parallel this back to the probation office. Quite frankly, I would do that. But the way I understand it, if it is that they use punch cards and the busing authority can bill them for how many punch cards came through. They don't pay them up front necessarily. And so we could just reimburse them also based on an invoice so that they can send a check or we can send a check directly to the busing authority.
I thought he bought the punch cards up front.
Well, again, as I understood my conversation with Sean, that they've done it, they weren't even using punch tickets, punch cards. They were using a bus pass that someone would come in and they would give them. Going forward, they're looking at using punch cards so that it would be turned into the busing authority. I don't know how many punches would be on a card, and then they could bill the probation office for the usage. That's what I understood him to say. And the reason why I bring that up, and I don't mean, I know I'm digressing here, but you said like last year they only had $1,600 to work with. So they'd not always use $2,000.
Well,
Right.
and I kind of look at that with Central Wellness. They know who they're dealing. Know the hours that they're putting in there. I've seen time they've had more requests than they can fulfill. A lot of folks that need the help and just because of districts and there's not enough people.
Well, that and Medicaid recently made everyone requalify because COVID pandemic was over with. And this is to address those people who no longer are Medicaid eligible.
Fell off.
They fell off.
Fell off because it changed.
Yep.
It's typical with the HHS. Just saying, I think there's a way to be able to tell how many folks are helping and hours are helpful. I don't. That's an idea where our money's going, paying is. Get it that way. Where the money's going and is it being used correct? So
Everybody on board with that?
So we're talking about moving this forward too then.
I would like to move the central wellness one
So
forward.
moving
Yeah.
central
So I'd be in favor of moving Central Wellness forward with a reimbursable mechanism.
and written
Issue.
feedback and reporting.
Right.
Got him.
Let's
And-
bring up,
And let's go back though to the probation office. Are we gonna write them a check for $2,000 or are we gonna do it based on need?
I'm understanding probably reimbursable again, or they bill us directly for the passes.
yeah. if
I'm
what you're
comfortable with
saying
that.
is true, that they're gonna get an invoice for how many punches they had, and that will just be paid up till.
Yeah,
And if it turns out it's different, just let us know.
okay.
But
I can
it
check
also,
with Sean.
if they decided to do some cost sharing with us, that would change the $2,000 too. It would make it 1,000 instead of 2,000
4,000, 242.
or 4,000. See, I've already cut them back.
You did.
Yeah, you did.
That was quick.
Sean, if you're listening in, Sean.
All right, let's talk about, everybody comfortable with those two conversations? Okay, let's go on, let's move on to River Bend Recovery. They adjusted their ask significantly from the 200,000 down to, I believe, 23,000.
Yeah.
Change. I think my first question is the purpose they've stated for the funding eligible under opioid dollar parameters?
So 22,650 is the new request, specifically.
That's the how to pay the house manager.
Mhm. So I'm not sure if that is technically an allowable expenditure. Could we work with them to make it an allowable expenditure and work with them on where that money is being applied? I think yes. But from a face value, I'm not sure it fully meets the criteria of Exhibit E. But I do think that if we worked with them, we could work with them. We could work with them to make sure they're utilizing the money for an allowable expenditure, because their whole premise and their whole idea of what they want to do is definitely most elements are allowed under the Exhibit E. I just don't think that that money specifically for the purpose they want to use it for at that face value would fully meet muster.
Well, we have to be in compliance with what we spend this. That's not even a question, so,
Does this beg the question, do we have them work with you and come back to us saying this is what we're proposing and how we're gonna spend the money? And
Yeah,
we'll cross
I
that bridge
think-
then?
I think it would be good for, myself with Colin and the other gentleman, I forget his name, to sit down and look at their operational plan and then pull out the key elements that meet muster of Exhibit E. And then that would be what the money would be applied for.
I would like to see them be successful.
Mhm.
Where I appreciate the sheriff's letter in the packet. I
Yeah.
appreciate Sean's letter in the packet. They're trying to, something done. in our
Definitely.
community. So if you would take that on
I can do that.
to work with them, how does everybody else feel?
My only I think this is a good effort. We don't have it in this county now. My concern continues to be sustainability. You know, does it make it 1 year and then the doors are closed? And if that's the case, we need to acknowledge that we're making an investment. You know, and investments don't always pan out.
Yeah.
But nobody else is doing this in our community. And I'm with you. They've got to be in compliance because there may be some penalties built in for us if we're not using that money properly.
Right.
I don't think it's just a matter of we refund it. I think it's,
Is anybody
Fine.
against Katie working with Riverbend Recovery to try and make this a possibility?
Yeah, I don't think just paying for this gentleman's salary, the house manager, is allowable. Some of the money can be used for salaries of certain positions, but it has to be like a licensed social worker and a license this and a license that. We don't know who this house manager's necessarily going to be and what your credentials are. So that's where the gray area falls in. So maybe this person meets all these other requirements and then we could potentially apply the money towards their salary. But Exhibit E says it can only be used for salary of certain credentialed individuals.
But there's other categories.
But there's plenty of other categories of their space that I think do meet Exhibit E. So maybe the better alternative is just to plug it into those other categories.
Well, if I remember the write-up correctly, they do have somebody overseeing this that has experience, is credentialed in this.
Correct.
You know, my question is do we need to have them break out what percentage of the time is being used for treatment of alcoholism versus drug rehab? Because that could throw us out of compliance.
They can do any treatment at this facility.
No, there's. no
Well,
treatment.
that's a bad word. They're doing some programming. They must do some programming there, don't they?
I don't know.
I
This
think it's
is,
just safe harbor.
it's, yes.
This is a
A place for them to land?
They
place
may
to
be-
stay, a sober house.
Yeah.
A place
Oh.
where you're not,
They may be helping them get to programming and
right,
stuff, but
but the
this is
programming
really
is
just a
not
sober
there.
house.
Okay.
And so, and you're also right, you know, they focused a lot on alcoholism, and so that we may have to kind of break that out as well.
Yeah, like what percentage of the men staying there are being treated for alcoholism versus opioid abuse?
At the end of the day, I need Katie to feel confident that we're within the parameters, of what the money can be used for.
Right.
And that can be presented to us. I'm all in favor of supporting
Mhm.
the house and seeing them make a run at it.
Yes. I think there's probably a way to get there, but right now, I don't think it's clear enough. I think we just need to talk about it some more.
If we could build into that though, because there is all this uncertainty, I'd prefer we didn't wait 1 year to get a report back from them. As they fill up the house, I'd like to know, are they in compliance as they're bringing in these gentlemen? Because, well, how many are they bringing in? 6?
Six initially,
Yeah.
up to 10.
So I don't think that we should wait a full year to determine that they were in compliance.
We got some remodeling. Really.
That's a look.
So again, it would be
So-
one of those situations where whatever we decided the money was gonna be used for, that was eligible. They're reimbursable type of thing. I mean, we're not handing the money over so the work can be done. The work would have to be done and be. Or whatever you decide, or you decide that it's eligible for. I mean, we just have to figure, this one needs to be worked on a little bit.
Yeah, I think we have to be careful though about requiring it be reimbursable. I doubt these guys have the cash.
That's true too.
So I will try to set up a time with them to chat through this a bit more, and this one will come back again.
It should, because it puts a lot of the onus on you otherwise. You
Yeah,
know,
oh yeah, it'll definitely come back.
I wouldn't want that level of responsibility. Find out that something went wrong and
Everybody comfortable with that decision? Okay, and then our final one was Robenzi. They,
It was the Human Services Collaborative.
Human Services Collaborative, yes.
they're putting on educational programs like we did before. Is that correct?
It's part of prevention, but they talk
It's-
about building a team.
Yeah, it looks like.
Well, some of the concern that I've heard is that some of the product like that, Neax, what's that called?
Naloxone.
Like,
Narcan.
Narcan.
like Narcan, we're asking to be funded for that or fund some of that, but yet it's free?
You can get it free from a lot of locations, the health department,
And wasn't there some other things they were doing that,
This one, that was in the central wellness one.
oh, thank you. Okay.
You did a lot of. You, a lot of education. Right here, so all I see this is. A money grab and a patient. Already under expanding, not trying to.
This does fall in line, prevention with middle and high school students that. You know, and that was a big weighted one on this sheet was. Oh, I can't remember where that was.
Maybe.
I liked that. prevention training. I mean, part of this, right? And so what we've done here is we've given services. We've done a couple of services thing. We're thinking about, another safe harbor. And then to me, this one is another service. This is a prevention hat, that prevention bucket.
Yeah, I love the prevention bucket. I would love to do what we did last year and provide the speakers at the, almost half of the ask is administrative costs. And this one, that's a deterrent for me, if these are established groups. I would like to break out,
I can tell you that $5,000 for a speaker is not realistic unless they're doing it on their own. Because the speaker we brought in to the schools and did the 3 assemblies was almost $20,000.
really,
It was very expensive because we did so many different assemblies. So the $5,000, that would be bringing in maybe local people to get their like reaccount of maybe their situation, or, educators that are here locally already. So I don't know what the plan was for their proposal on what sort of speakers they were planning to bring in. But I mean, we brought in a nationally acclaimed speaker regarding this, and it was 3-4 times that amount of money.
You had another funding source too. But
So the bag piece was another funding source. Yeah, all the bags we bought.
But those are, again, they don't need to go buy those. Those are available somewhere, right?
Yeah, how many more do you still have? Quite a few up there, I'm guessing. And then, yeah, and we had given a bunch to the health department, the school nurses. We handed out a lot of those bags. We bought multiple thousands of them last year with marijuana dollars.
So could we take a list of their budget request and maybe fund some of it anyway?
Good.
they need to come back and address $5,000 speakers that. They must have some idea what they're talking.
You could ask them maybe, yeah, what type of speaker or what have you. I mean, I don't know why not.
Yeah, a line item here, working with local schools, the Bay Initiative aims to bring speaker. Oh, I see. Bay Initiative is them.
Yeah, that's
Sorry.
the Bay Area Youth Initiative is them.
who headed up the speaker? Tony, what was his, he was.
Tony
Kate
Hoffman,
Carter.
Deputy Mull found him in her research. And then her and I worked together to get him here, to get all of his stuff arranged, to get the assemblies arranged. She reached out to Frankfurt. I reached out to
Were you able to
Benzie.
listen to any of his presentations?
I watched like prior ones that are
Yeah,
posted
if-
online, but I wasn't able to get over to the
Yeah,
speaker at
the
the
feedback
school.
that I heard was that it was very impactful.
That's everything I was told too by both Amy and Jeff. They said it was a really great assembly for the kids.
Yeah.
Do you know what attendance they had there?
Oh, they did all their junior high, both
And high
schools and high
schools.
school.
Yeah, they
Okay.
required all like 6th grade to 12th grade kids to
So
go.
they did this during the school day?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, we scheduled assembly times during the school year. Yeah, forced presentation.
Do you think Officer Mall would be interested in arranging something like that again?
I would leave. He says yes.
You think so? That would be,
so
know she
that's
enjoyed
something
it.
we would do outside of their program, right?
well, yeah, and I would take that off here, but I think she would also need to know that this would be a renewable. But like she did it in the past, I don't think she needs to apply again. Unless you think a new application is necessary. We did it in the past, they got great feedback. And so why aren't we continuing to do it? This is one of those things that should have been like. We heard what you said, the schools were pleased that we did it. We
Yeah.
have the funding here to do it. This is preventive, it's in the prevention bucket. Let's just plan on it.
Yeah,
And you're reaching all the kids,
And you're
basically,
reaching all the kids.
the most part in the county.
middle and high school. Yeah, I know last year we brought forward his biography and his speakings, and we gave, links to past speaking. So I would advise that would be a good idea. Obviously, that you know who the speaker is going to be, so that you can sign off on it. In addition to Jeff and Amy signed off on the speaker as well.
She would, if she would be willing, I think it's a great. idea.
Yeah, yeah.
Scientifically, it's been proven, you can't just speak one time on a subject,
Right.
especially with that age group. You got to be in front of them consistently. And if you're starting at sixth grade, then they should hear that message 6 times. So I'd be in favor of being consistent on that.
Okay.
All I'm asking is are we asking this group to arrange that, or are we asking the sheriff's office? Because
I thought-
we're talking about the liaison at the school, right?
Yeah, the SROs.
Yeah.
I mean, unless the sheriff wants to come up here and speak, I saw him nodding, that this is something he thought Officer Mall would. Would you be willing to work with her again to do what you did last year?
So we'd want at least a 1-page document requesting that, right? Or are we just doing that as a result of this conversation?
It's up to you. I mean, last time we brought forward who the speaker was and what they spoke about. So if that's something you want county staff to continue to do, I would be more comfortable if you approved it once we presented you the speaker.
Yeah.
So
I
if
think
we
that's-
find you a speaker, that's another motivational type speaker, we'll bring it to you and you could approve it at that time.
I know we've already said we got to streamline this, Katie.
Yeah.
But I'm concerned about criticism from the community. They say, oh, well, the county didn't have to go through the same process that you asked everybody else to go through.
Well, we're trying to make it easier. We know this was effective. We had good feedback. So what we're doing is we're simplifying it and saying, if you find a speaker, if you seem to be a good fit, bring that person forward and we'll approve that.
I have,
And
with you 100%.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, we should have something documented in front of us though, and not just a verbal, okay.
um,
I'm gonna bring back something for you to then memorialize by motion.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
So we can't make decisions here anyways.
yeah, today's just recommendation.
No, I get that, but trying to avoid criticism, that's all.
Well, but we also had the conversation at the last study session, and how I introduced this item is it's too cumbersome for internal staff. So now you're saying, well, we're gonna get criticism from the community. So are we gonna?
No,
just
no,
have to find
I'm
the
not
doc-
saying we should put them through this process.
Okay,
We need something in writing making the request.
Okay.
I don't even care if it's just a 1-page memo. Because you're right, we've already said too cumbersome.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't want to pursue it. I mean, we got that out of the way and we're gonna rebuild that.
so we will bring back something to this board for approval. For prevention impact of the schools, in the
Sure.
schools.
So going back to this request, that part of it, that 5,000 is gone then.
right, and we've established, we still have pouches available and for their lock boxes too. There's a lot of this that's administrative. I don't know if anything, I mean, I think Bay is an organization. What is it? The Benzie Area Youth? Is that what the acronym is?
Benzie area youth, yeah.
Area and Youth. The pamphlets on health risks of SUD, mental health information and prevention materials, I have to believe those exist. I'm not sure which portions of this would still be viable to fund.
Look at it as handle and setting. It's the feeling I've had.
Big chunk of this is for coordination.
Correct.
Find that out.
So yes, there's the form the task force piece, prevention training, distribution of drug deactivation and disposal pouches, lock bags and box distribution, speaker, host resource table at community events, and social media posting. That was what they listed.
And is this a new program for them?
Well, I mean, they do prevention stuff and they focus on the youth. And you'll recall last year there was a community resource fair that they helped out with, and the county contributed $2,000 to that fair. I am told though this year that community resource fair was put on the schools to host, not this group. So they did do that last year. I'm sure they attend various events regarding the area youth. I know that the school nurses are somehow tied into this group. I do think Deputy Malls probably attended this meeting a time or two. I feel like she was on there the one time I attended. They meet and network and, brainstorm ideas and how to impact our kids.
Yeah, but in more than just resistance to using opioids.
Yeah, it's Bay Area youth, it's Benzie area youth. It's encompassing. Yeah.
So what's happening is we little by little stripping away their request because other groups are already doing it, which means that the amount of money you'd use for coordination or administration has to decline also because we're asking them to use less of their time.
Right. And you can't fund the other elements of the
Right.
group with this money.
So then, does this mean that we are gonna help them and with some of our extra drug deactivation and disposal pouches, we will give them to them and lock boxes and whatnot because we have a surplus?
So I'll have to
Yeah.
ask them how much they still have left over because Sarah May had taken a great chunk of them when they went to the resource fair last year. She came and picked them all up. So I'll have to ask what they have left because their group in concert with the health department created a little rack card to put inside the bags that were then given out.
And Sheriff, you said that you had 2 boxes less, but how many are in a box?
Oh, gosh. Well, it depends on the size of them because we bought multiple sizes and then we bought like bags versus boxes. We just bought everything because we didn't know what people would want. So oh gosh, you probably have,
They're all different sizes, like you said.
yeah. I would guess there's 500 plus between those boxes because of all the sizes.
And do you have a plan for those, or is that something we could offer a portion to the Bay program?
We can give them some, but I'm guessing they still have some from when they took a huge chunk of them for the resource fair. Because we ain't bought multiple thousands of them and they were distributed to many agencies, the schools, the sheriff's office, the health department. Their group, yeah. So, but if we need to give them more, I'm sure we can share.
Yeah. My officers have them, some of them with them all the time in case there's a need, including the school resource deputies, so. But we do have a cache of them somewhere that we can,
So more than 50 for sure.
Oh, yeah.
So it sounds like we want to help them, but we're not gonna fund everything they're asking.
And what's remaining is questionable whether it falls under opioid or not.
Right.
Stuff, if we can help them with product and stuff for the bags.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
So we can kind of get somewhat of a handle on what's up there. But based on that and what the need is among the agencies, is there a recommendation of approval to move forward with my office buying more for them, buying more product? Is that what you're looking for?
I think we need to get an assessment on who has what.
Sure.
I think it's necessary. We can revisit that if there's a need there, but right
Yeah.
now we don't even know.
But
Yeah, I
if
don't
we
know
had
how
to
many-
replenish it,
Yeah.
I would say sure.
Yeah.
But we don't even know if we need to replenish it yet.
Yeah, the health department has not asked for more, so I don't think they've run out. They came in with 2 boxes as well.
So maybe that's a directive to find out if there's a need there. Perhaps, yes.
About their training piece, they have $3,200 for 8 prevention workers registration fees for a Reach Lab annual conference.
Where did you find that definition of what that is?
So it's on page 73 of the packet.
Okay,
The
I
online.
get
pack.
there.
Yes, the online packet. It's a breakdown of
Got it.
all the costs.
And what is Reach Lab?
I'm just finding stuff on cannabis, not on opioid.
About that.
But the Reach Lab that's just quick into Google. It just maybe
So it's the Stanford Reach Lab, and the Reach Lab was developed, Developed and distributed several prevention and intervention toolkits and curriculums aimed at preventing and reducing adolescent and young adult substance use. All of these curriculums are evidence informed and evidence-based and are completely free and available online. These resources are geared towards anyone who works with youth, including educators, administrators, healthcare providers, and parents and guardians. The goal of these curriculums are for the students to understand basic information about different drugs, gain awareness of deceptive marketing strategies used by manufacturers to lure youth to use, and gain skill to refuse experimentations of use of drug use. So it's training and curriculum for like the teachers and the school nurses, it sounds like.
That it's free online?
Well, the curriculum is free, but it looks like they want to go to a conference. So there must be a conference related to how to then give out the training and, teach about it.
This to me is still quite vague. I don't know where the 8-year-olds that are going and how do they have access to the kids to impact them?
Mhm. Well, let's see that. So the only annual conference on the Stanford website shows is, it says annual cannabis conference, but then when you look at the flyer for it, it does say it talks about tobacco, nicotine, fentanyl, opioids, alcohol, hallucinogens, and other substances. And it's coming up in April.
And then those
That's right.
workers would be in the field with area youth, working with them.
That's how I understand their proposal, is it would be folks who then would have impact on the kids.
And how is this program funded otherwise? Do we know?
What program?
Yeah.
Well,
Area youth initiative.
Benzie area, it's part of the multiple bodies that come from Grow Benzie. So I'm guessing through grants and other things.
We do this, can we ask the question what the need is there as far as the bags and the safety case, and then ask for a little bit more information on this program? Who would be going? How would they impact? What is their connection to kids? We just need to know,
Mhm.
is it 8 people that are ready to go to this? Could it be 4 people? And I just think we need a better grasp of what the ask is.
But and quite frankly, if they don't have the money already for the coordinator and administration, they can't even do the rest of this. So they have no vehicle to deliver it. So I need to understand that too. And 8 preventative workers registering for it, 8 volunteers. What if I find out that they're only reaching 12 kids? Why would they need 8 volunteers? I'm just guessing. For all I know, they're reaching 100. I have no idea.
It looks like it looks like they would probably attend it virtually based on what I'm seeing here, but it doesn't exactly say where it's at.
I think it's a virtual conference.
That's what it looks like, is virtual.
And under educational materials, just on their own write-up, they exclude themselves.
Katie, it does say virtual conference.
Does it?
Yep.
Oh, it must be on a different page.
6th annual Teaching Cannabis and Other Drugs Awareness and
Cannabis.
Prevention Virtual Conference.
Okay, so we're going to ask who,
Right now, the only thing I see that's out, could be potentially eligible is the training.
who would
Because
attend the
They're
training?
they're doing other things than just opioid prevention. So how much of it, the administration and the coordination of it, what percentage of that go to it? Well, that'd be pretty hard to define.
So you want me to find out from them who would actually attend the training and how their connection is to getting this information to the youth in our
how
community?
many
Is it
people?
worthwhile to even attend this if the full package isn't being funded? Because at this point, it doesn't look like this full ask is gonna be funded. So.
If you get down to the training, I'm sorry.
No, do they still want a portion? Do they still want to be considered for people going through the training? And then we have to understand how that can be impactful.
Like
Yeah,
how many you're serving.
Yeah.
So sounds like coordination off the top prevention speaker, our sheriff's office would manage training, potentially educational materials,
By their own definition, it doesn't qualify.
drug deactivation and disposal pouches and lock bags.
We
So-
can give them those.
Yeah, so lock bags we have. Drug deactivation pouches are separate. That we don't have. We have lock bags to give out to the community. Drug deactivation pouches, that was one of those vendors at the MAT conference, Gary. Oh, okay,
Free
remember the
pouches for
doTERRA package
1875
that they were
Really
to
do.
deactivate drugs.
drugs in
It was
there.
at that conference.
I was too busy getting some.
Activate.
So yeah, it's a substance that you would put in like a bag with the drug. And I think when you break the pouch, whatever's in the pouch is supposed to deactivate the drug itself to make it, so it's not harmful if ingested. or
Proprietary
this like-
activated carbon.
Medicine cabinet, or is this like pills you would find somewhere and you just want to make sure they're?
I think it could be just about anything you can use it for any pill, I guess, you came across.
Well, the way I just understood you presenting it is, let's say I have a prescription that I know I don't need right now. I don't need anymore. This is a way to dispose of it.
Yeah, it deactivates whatever's in that medication.
But don't we have that service up at the sheriff's office?
Yes, sir.
You can almost any doctor's office or hospital, you could do that too.
Yes, I think. And does the health department also have a disposal like you? I'm not sure.
I think, Paul Oliver does. They do
Oliver
a
has
store
one,
and
yeah.
door.
That's what I was wondering, asking the sheriff. I wasn't sure if they had one or not.
I mean, I realize it's less convenient, but it is available for people that want to take advantage of it. I'm not even sure of how many people actually use your service. Really?
Oh, yeah.
Well, should we
I've
be
done
using
stuff
the
up there.
opioid dollars to provide these pouches for handing out? I mean, we can order them and
Yeah, I mean, if they've got an audience that it applies to, that's something apparently that's not happening other ways. You're looking for some guidance.
Yes, we're not involved. We're not involved in handing out doTERRA pouches. doTERRA is just a
What-
brand, by the way.
Yeah, I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt and say, yeah, put that one in there. Now, to Rhonda's comment a moment ago, if the program itself isn't moving forward, then it doesn't matter. But if they have some deviation of this program that says, yep, we'd still like to have those available, it looks like a qualifying event.
if we have opportunities where these could be handed out to the people who need them and it's getting them to the right places, then you would absolutely, I feel like, want to.
Yeah, and these aren't going to the youth. I mean, these are going to parents and grandparents and,
To stop the youth from getting.
Yeah.
yeah, right.
So, the purchase of, pouches and bags, I'm gonna couple that in there.
Okay.
So I'll ask Sarah, if these two elements of the package are funded, would you still move forward with this? Or does this make sense? Or is it all or nothing? I'll ask her process on that. If she definitely needs more bags, I'll see if she has any backlog left. If not, we can try to get a count on what's left. Sheriff's office and the health department, as well as the school nurses have them as well. We can try to get a count on all that too. And then the doTERRA pouches, which is just a brand. Those are a separate pouch purchased separately anyways.
Price goes at about $7 per pouch. On Amazon, you can buy it for $8.66 per pouch.
Here's a 3-pack for
that-
1875.
Yeah.
$18.75?
They noted here 250 pouches for $1,750.
I just, first one I saw, I clicked on. I didn't shop around.
There was a vendor at the vendor showcase at a conference. I remember learning about them. And it's like a charcoal deactivation type thing.
So remind me, how much money did we start out with that was available to grant?
Almost $200,000.
Almost 200. And we're, based on the decisions or recommendations that we're making, there's still a considerable amount of money left.
Yeah, so Central Wellness is the $50,000. Sean's program is $4,000 for this year, but up 20.
Yeah, but that could be we're gonna be getting other opioid dollars in.
Yep. Yeah, I actually just got an email yesterday. I haven't read about opioid dollars, which tells me there's probably more money coming. And then the Riverbend will work through and theirs was 22,650. And then the this final one, if you funded just those few elements, you're looking at $6,000 to $7,000.
Okay, so now we're at 50, 70. Or no, 50, 55. Looks like we got about 20,000 left, 30,000 left. Does that sound about right?
No, 50 is 83. No, you're got about 100 to 110.
Oh, I was thinking 100,000. Yeah, so we need to get back out into the community and change the criteria for submission.
Do you want me to bring that criteria to you, or do you want me to just tweak it up and change it, or?
I think there's a
Before I publish
possibility
it.
of some of these that we're funding being very effective, and therefore in following years, they could become just renewable because they're working. So I wouldn't worry too much about. I mean, we want to broaden if there's something that's gonna have impact in the community. But right now with a speaker at, $20-ish thousand, supplementing Central Wellness with 50, whatever donations we can make, which could be cyclical for Riverbend if it becomes an effective program. What am I missing? Sean,
Which is
annually. So I don't know. I anticipate some of these things being things we can fund annually.
And I think the projection on the opioid settlements, I do know that some of them probably were larger upfront and then up yearly contributions to the settlement may be smaller.
Mhm.
So by year 10, we may not be getting nearly as much as we have now.
Yeah, 'cause it's over 18 years total.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. What I don't want to find out is that 7 years from now, we're sitting on a surplus when it could be in the community doing some good.
Agreed.
Right.
I think we're gonna keep an eye on the ball on this.
Okay. And there may be something new that comes along, and I get about the renewal. Again, there's some communities that haven't done anything with the money yet, and honestly, that's never was the intention. I'm not-
They've now created a committee to start working through some of this so they can get the money out the door.
Yeah.
Yes, they're starting
Great.
to.
Is everybody satisfied with this conversation or anything to add?
I don't think we can
Okay,
beat
and then
that.
we have our quarterly review in the packet with percentages on the right-hand side. Did anybody have questions for Katie regarding that?
Yeah, listen, I don't want to belabor this, all right? But Katie, would you please take one of those pages and share with us again how we should read that? I mean, some of it's revenue, some of it's expenses.
Correct.
Can you just walk us through that?
Yep. So when you're looking at the budget, the first set of 3 numbers is always your fund number. The second set of 3 numbers is your department number. The third set and the last 2 are your account numbers. Anything before 700 and the account numbers are revenue lines. Anything after 700 and those last account numbers is an expenditure line. So when you're looking at the percentages on the right-hand side, the far right, and it says percentage budget used, if you're looking at an account number that is a revenue and you see that percentage is say 300%, that means we've collected 3 times as much revenue as we anticipated collecting. Now, if it was an expenditure line and it was 300%, we've utilized 3 times the amount of money that we expected to use. Looking at the general fund overall, so not looking at individual lines and departments, we're really tracking where we're supposed to be. We're roughly 25% of the way through the budget year, and that's where we're tracking when it comes to the numbers. So we really are on track. There are a few lines that are near 100%, and that's usually explained by various things. One, it's an annual bill, and we paid the bill. Now it's at 100%. Some of the costs are unexpected, for instance, for the courts. We may have planned for 2 jury trials and we've had more than 2 jury trials, and then you have to pay out many more jurors than we expected. So sometimes those ones are a little hard to predict because we just don't know. The medical examiner's department, for instance, is tracking high. And that's because you can't plan death. So we anticipated, you know, a rough amount of services in that realm, and so far we're tracking high on that. And that's just unfortunate when you look at it, but it's just the way it is. But at the bottom line of the general fund, we're tracking on track for where we're at in the fiscal year specifically. If you're looking at, let's see, so general fund 101253 is the treasurer, and that is typically where most of the revenues are recorded for the general fund. Anything coming from the state and such is recorded there. The other departments also have some revenue lines, typically refunds and rebates and administrative fees, but most of your revenue does come in through the treasurer's office specifically, which makes sense, right? Your taxes and stuff like that. So you'll notice in here that the 101-253-402, the current real tax, property taxes. So when I ran this report, it shows we've collected 0.01 in taxes. Well, we're in the midst of, you know, finishing up taxes here pretty soon. They refer to March as March Madness and not for basketball reasons. And so that number will start to look a lot better here soon because we're in phase of collecting taxes right now. Other than that, really things look quite well. There are a few different lines that are tracking high, like some of the overtime lines in other funds, but you know, we're in the midst of, we're short in staffing in EMS, so that overtime is a bit high. We do have some staffing issues in corrections because there is a couple of folks that are off right now for long-term reasons. So that is contributing to some, you know, increase in overtime there. But overall, things really are tracking well. So far, revenues are coming in as we expected, so we're happy with that. And we really haven't had any issues as far as people needing to move money around at this point. There was a few things that just were missed in the grand scheme of budgeting with new staff, and we've already taken care of those here at the board level, like the land bank authority transfer, for instance. That's been taken care of. The adjustments will be made for the wages soon. We just haven't done that yet, but that's already approved. We just have to move those funds from contingency. So I guess I'll just ask if there's questions.
So under overtime, I want to use that as my example. When I see that overtime is over budget, my expectations are that wages should be under budget. Because you're taking smaller number of people having to pay them overtime. A fair assessment?
Not necessarily. It depends on why somebody's out or if the position is vacant or not. So if the position is vacant, then yes, that would be a fair assumption to make. But if somebody is out on some sort of leave, whether it be medical leave, work comp leave, paid admin leave, then that assessment wouldn't necessarily be fair.
So if I'm out for some kind of, well, I guess I'm thinking of someone that's hurt on the job, never mind. Because that comes from out of a different bucket yet, right?
So it depends on the union contract if it's work comp related.
Okay. And when I look at these reports, I don't look at line items, I look at categories.
Mhm.
So I don't care if you're over in one line item, but if the category says you're at, 27%, it's really all I care about.
Mhm.
Is that a fair way to look at it?
Yes, and within the fund that is, we can't really move money from fund to fund outside of the general fund. And so as long as you're within the fund, that is a fair assessment to make.
And is there anything on this that you should be bringing to our attention? Any items that are over budget and you don't think will continue to be over budget through the balance of the fiscal year?
No, we really don't have anything on here that's alarming at this point. We don't anticipate anything coming up that's alarming. So no, we really don't. Mm-mm.
And as we look at this quarterly, Katie, that'd be one of the things that I'd ask is that you bring to our attention these items. When they're 10% over, I don't care.
Right, yeah. Yeah. Is there any questions from anyone else? Is there any line that seems confusing or
I wanted to
off?
ask you about to the county treasurers. Guess we budgeted 250,000.
Yes.
The way I read that,
Hold on.
collected 62.
So are you 101,
101, 253, 665.
665, interest on deposits? So, yeah, so far, so we budgeted interest on deposits, $250,000. We right now have brought in just shy of $63,000 in interest, which is about 25%. So if you're tracking from where we're at in the fiscal year, we're tracking on about 250,000 in interest.
And we're right there. This is through January, right?
Yep, this is through January 1. Caveat though is Kelly's office balances the interest, and so sometimes that is a month in arrears specifically. So let me see if she's balanced through January as well.
This will all go in the general fund.
Everything that says 101 is general fund. It allows, interest is allowed to all be collected into the general fund. Yes.
Because this shows they're right on track.
Yes. So they have balanced interest through December. So they have not balanced interest for January yet. So that tells me we're actually ahead of track then, probably pretty close, like we're right on track.
I'm seeing interest under the 253.
101, 253,
It's under the county
665, interest on deposits. So that's balanced through December. So it's on track.
I don't see it either.
Let her find it.
It's on page 86 of the packet on the website.
I was way off.
So maybe you were in a different fund.
That's on
On
summer.
deposit.
Oh, interest. Oh, okay.
Give them the number again, Katie.
Page 80, Page-
253-665.
correct. And then Kelly just messaged me and said they are just about done doing January's interest. So we can get you an updated number soon when that's done.
I'm just happy with it.
Okay.
Is that because this isn't a Michigan class?
Yes.
Most,
Funds?
yes. So we're diversified. Not everything's Michigan class, but the big chunks of money are in Michigan class. Yeah.
Any other questions for Katie?
Just
Right.
look forward to seeing this every quarter.
Yeah,
That's all.
thank you for providing that helpful.
Yep.
Okay, I believe that moves us to our last public input. All right, I'm gonna close on public input and look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Wait.
Already got it. Okay.
Okay.
No, I didn't say anything.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned at 3:13.